Hey, welcome everyone. Fred Gleek here with Bill DeWeese, and presumably you're in the sales field because tonight is all about showing you how to get from being a salesperson to being a voiceover artist, or you can do both simultaneously. So, Bill, before we get started, turn on your camera. Let them know you're the real deal.
Oh yeah, here we go. Let's see here. See if this is working. All right, is that coming through?
It is.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm sitting here in my studio in the basement of my home. I live about an hour south of Chicago, actually out kind of in the middle of a cornfield. So you can live anywhere and do this, that's for sure.
Perfect. So, what we're going to do is go ahead and just get started because usually we might go through and find out where everybody's from. But Bill is Bill's been a warrior all this week because he's not feeling real well and having to crank out a lot of voiceover work. But the show must go on. Go ahead, Bill.
When your greatest curse is you have too much work, then you really can't you can't complain. I'm in the middle of this huge documentary. It's just hours and hours and hours of work. But again, I mean, I'm blessed to have the work, so no complaints. When it comes to sales, and I'll just turn off the camera here. I think you've seen my mug enough there. Even if you've never been in a formal sales position, we all have had done something related to sales. Whether it's trying to convince your boss to take on a new project, trying to convince your kids to do something. We all do sales of one sort or another. But this is more geared to those who have had jobs in, or maybe you're in it now, or perhaps you've retired from the past, but you have some sense of what it means to sit down with somebody and to present your case to sell a product or a service. And actually, I have a little bit of a background in that myself. You may be, if you follow me at all, you may know that I was actually in radio for quite a while. But prior to that, as a kid, I sold. Yeah, I sold flower seeds door to door. Whatever possessed me to do that, I have no idea. But I remember ordering a catalog and going door to door to take orders from my neighbors. I took on two newspapers as a kid. I had a morning route for one paper before school, and I had another route after school. And so I was very industrious as a young man. I also sold fireworks illegally, but that's a whole other story. We won't go down that road. I remember selling lemonade, setting up lemonade stands. As I got a little bit older in college, and this was actually a defining moment of my life. It was the hardest job I've ever had, way harder than voiceover or anything I've ever done, but it forever changed the trajectory of my life. I sold books door to door in college the summer after my freshman year to help put myself through school. And the company I worked for, the Southwestern company, actually they ship you off to another city outside of your home. It's such a hard job, they don't want you to be near home. And so I remember they sent me to Gastonia, North Carolina, where for 13 and a half hours a day, 6 days a week, by myself, I went door to door, knocking on doors, selling books, and I learned so much. I learned that if you just keep moving forward, usually you can make something happen, even if you're not that talented, which I was not. When I first got involved in radio, I sold airtime, I sold radio commercials. I was the district manager for a Chicago area consulting firm where I sold consulting services into small, medium-sized businesses. And then I was a vice president of sales for a corporate sales learning services company after that. So sales is something that I know a little bit about, and I can certainly relate to you on that level. And as salespeople, there are things that I've learned, there are things that you've learned, and oftentimes I think we look at our experiences in a vacuum as these separate things that happen. But what I want to encourage you to do is step back a little bit and see how your experience, how the skills that you've developed, the things that you have learned, can actually be applicable to a brand new career, specifically voiceover. And one of the most important lessons of sales, in my experience, was overcoming fear. The idea of actually approaching somebody and talking to somebody and asking somebody for the sale. And one of the things that keep a lot of people out of voiceover, it's something new, it's something different. They've never had to be responsible for their own self in terms of a business. They've always worked for somebody else. So that's something you understand. You also had to learn how to not take rejection personally. When somebody tells you no, for those who have never been in voiceover and don't have a sales background, the the instinct is to take every no, and when I say no, I mean not getting the job. We audition for work. That's essentially that's how we get work. And when we don't get hired, if somebody doesn't have a sales background, they often take that to mean, well, they're not any good. Well, I must not be good because I didn't get the job. Oh, I must be awful. I can't. Why did I ever even decide to do this in the first place? But if you're in sales, you understand that it's not personal. In voiceover, it just might be you're not the right voice for that project. The best of the best lose more than they win. in voiceover. And in sales, you understand that it's a numbers game, that if you knock on enough doors, whether literally or figuratively, somebody eventually is going to say yes. And I remember it took me about 100 auditions to get my first job. And when somebody finally did hire me, I'll never forget, it was an all whole job. It actually paid $200, which is actually pretty good pay for that time 13 years ago for what the job was. But I remember thinking this, and I've never forgot this, that if one person was willing to say yes and hire me, I just bet that there's somebody else out there who's willing to say yes. And when somebody else did say yes, I just kept thinking, you know what, if there's two people, there must be three. And I've actually recorded over 10,000 jobs now over the past 13 years. Something else you understand as a salesperson is how to tell stories. And that's how you sell. That's how you connect at a deeper level, by sharing stories. And that's what we do behind the microphone of voiceover, storytelling. So you've got experience there. Also, persistence. I always tell the students that I work with, it's great to be talented and gifted. But at the end of the day, the people who succeed in voiceover are not the most talented and the most gifted. And I know after many years doing this and after coaching hundreds of students, the people who succeed are not the most talented. They are by far the most persistent, willing to pick up and move to the next person. If they say no, you pick up and move to the next person. And also, salespeople tend to be good problem solvers. You have to be very independent and take a lot of personal responsibility and figure stuff out. And when you work by yourself at home, as most of us do in voiceover, the idea of solving problems is huge, and it's an important key to success. But these are things that you know and you understand. And again, maybe you think of these kind of as isolated from voiceover, but they're not. These are extremely applicable to what we do. And there's one thing that I think is even more important. There's one thing that salespeople understand that most people don't. This is something that you get and can make all the difference. And that is that most people make decisions with their emotions rather than their intellect. I'm not saying that people don't think about what they're buying, but I'm saying at the end of the day, those who say yes usually have some sort of emotional connection to what's going on. And as a salesperson, it's your job to make them feel that emotion, which is what ultimately motivates them to move forward. In voiceover, that's what we do. As a matter of fact, I've reverse engineered the process, and let me share it with you. The process ends with the listener believing you. And that's how you get hired in voiceover. When a casting director, a client, when they listen to you, they believe you. Why do they believe you? Well, let's step back one more step, and that is they feel, so when they hear something, you elicit an emotion of some sort. It might be excitement, it might be joy, it might be fear, it might be uncertainty, it might be uneasiness, it might be sympathy and compassion, it might be love, but whatever it is, you feel something, otherwise you wouldn't even believe them, or they wouldn't even believe you, is what I mean to say. And for them to feel something, you have to feel and express that emotion when you read. And the way that happens, the very first step is you have to make your script, your story, personal. And the people who understand this process and execute this process, they make the script personal, they feel the emotion, the listener then feels, and they get hired. These are the people who book work once they get the opportunity to audition. And that's something that you understand that most people do not understand. I want to share another thought with you. And by the way, here very soon we're going to open up for questions. So if you do have questions, make a note to yourself, and we'll get to those here shortly. In my 13 years of voiceover, I've never really had to sell my services. Now, my sales background has been invaluable because I've had to implement the principles of sales to succeed. But the good news is I've never actually had to ask somebody to hire me. Think about that for a second. I've built a multiple six-figure business, and I've never had to ask somebody to hire me. I've only had to ask the magic question, and here is the magic question. Are you currently accepting voiceover demos? I can't express to you what a relief it was when I figured this out, because this is a simple yes or no question that 90% of the people I talk to have a yes answer for. It was a huge relief because I'm not saying, hey, will you hire me? I'm not putting them on the spot. I'm not making them uncomfortable. I'm not making myself comfortable. But every client that produces media content that uses voice, which, by the way, there are tens of thousands of these companies out there, the vast majority are very willing to accept and to review your voiceover demo. So if you walk away with nothing else tonight, make a note of this. Are you currently accepting voiceover demos? It literally is the magic question that I've used to book hundreds and thousands of jobs. Okay, I'm going to pause at that point. And Fred, was there anything else you wanted to interject before we move on?
No, I think that it's important that people understand that it really is. And I think that sometimes when you say this kind of thing about an art form that is supposed to be one that is only in, possession of those people with silver tongues and a great, voice that we hear like James Earl Jones or Morgan
Yeah.
Freeman, I think that people are sometimes a little bit skeptical. So the person on this call who is a salesperson really, I think, needs to be sold on the concept that you really can do this if you have a sales background.
And let me ask you this, as a salesperson, how many times has somebody bought from you because they liked your voice? They said, wow, you have a fantastic voice. I would love to buy this from you.
You know,
Nobody.
however, Bill, I think that that's why a lot of people get into the business because they hear that from friends and family, but that's not what a client says, right?
That's exactly right. There are a couple of really huge misconceptions, and that is one of the biggest that I have to deal with on an ongoing basis because you've seen my inbox before. I get so many emails from people saying, "Oh, I've been told my life I have a great voice," and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't hurt to have a nice voice, but people don't hire you because they like how you sound. They hire you because they believe you, and they believe you because they like how you make them feel when they listen to you,
Let me add
because you
another,
elicit an emotion.
let me add another item there, which is that you and I both, and certainly you more than I, you notice that those people who do have the amazing, whether it's deep resonant voices, those voices that many people might tell them, wow, you've got a great voice, you should be doing voiceover work, oftentimes those people have the toughest times, whereas people with sales backgrounds like you're describing have an easier time. Explain that.
Yeah, well, you understand in sales, if you've been successful in sales, you understand that there's a system involved. And that system is simply you understand what your product is, and you understand if you get it in front of enough of the right people, that somebody, regardless of your skill as a salesperson, eventually somebody's going to say yes. Now, for the highly skilled salesperson, let's say maybe they have to get in front of 10 people. And for the less skilled, maybe it'll take you 20 or 30. In my case, it took me 100 people to get somebody to eventually say yes. But you understand that the system is your salvation if you're willing to work that system and work the numbers. And what happens, at least in my case and with most people that I watch, is while it may take a little while to get started and you have to rely on the numbers game, the system, that eventually as your skills develop, your ratio, your win ratio, your closing ratio begins to grow and grow and grow.
Sounds good. I think we should keep moving.
Okay, so and I just want to mention the other misconception, and then we'll open this up for questions. And the other misconception is this: that you have to be represented by an agent. You have to work through what I'm going to call traditional channels. A couple of things. Technology has really changed a couple of things. One is the ability to work from home, which I've already talked about. The idea of working from my home 20 years ago would have been, and doing live sessions with studios all over the country and all over the world. I literally did a live session this afternoon with a studio in Baltimore, and I'm near Chicago because we used this high-speed internet connection through a software program called Source Connect to do that. And I've got clients in Germany and in Paris, and I mean all over the world. And so we've got that. But beyond that, the traditional gatekeepers. I mean, as salespeople, you've had to deal with gatekeepers. Especially if you're trying to contact somebody in the C-suite. There's somebody there you've got to get through to get to the other person. Well, in voiceover, that used to be the agent or the casting director. They held the power. And unless you had them on your side, meaning you were represented by that agent, you had virtually no opportunities. With technology, clients are now going directly to people like us, the talent, by using the internet. So all of the traditional channels for sales and marketing that used to exist in voiceover have essentially been obliterated. And I mean, yes, there are still agents, and yes, there are still some jobs that go through agents. But the vast majority, Fred and I were talking about this earlier this week, I think, Fred, you're estimating probably 90%, and I think that's probably a conservative estimate of all the voiceover work out there now goes around agents, not through agents, around agents. So there's never been an opportunity with more the growth of media content. There's never been as much content that needs voiceover. And there's never been as many projects, and it's never been easier. And now, when I say easier, don't misunderstand. You've got to do the work to get in front of the right people, but you have direct access to them. It has never been easier in that respect than it has been today. And again, with your background in sales, you are more than you probably realize uniquely qualified to succeed. Those were my major talking points because those are the things that you need to understand as a salesperson. And so I wanted to make sure we have a lot of time here for questions and discussion.
Yeah, well, hopefully as a group of salespeople on this call and on this webinar, I mean, we probably will have people who won't be too hesitant or, wilting violets so they won't ask questions. So folks, the floor is yours now. Ask the questions in the question box and I will go ahead and bring them up here. So again, this is geared to you as a salesperson. Yeah, I mean, and Glenn is mentioning the fact that can you share your thoughts on obtaining referrals and repeat business, which is, part and parcel of being a salesperson in any field?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because, again, that's just something any salesperson should do. And early on, I used to ask my clients for referrals. And what I found, for some reason, I don't know if it's specific to the media industry or what, but people were very hesitant. I mean, they loved working with me. It wasn't that because they gave me lots of business. But when I asked for the referrals, I rarely ever got the referrals. But what I found is that if I super serve my client, I regularly get my regular clients referring me to people. So what I've done, I never ask for it anymore. What I simply do is I super serve them. And occasionally in an email, and I do marketing emails, I will say toward the end of the email, your referrals are always appreciated. So I never put them on the spot. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. So again, in an email, I'll say your referrals are appreciated. But what I find out is that if I make life easy for my clients, they're glad to recommend me. As a matter of fact, I had a client today tell me, he said, you're easy. He said, the reason I've always loved working with you is just you're easy. Those are the clients who are likely to refer you.
Now, Bill, do you think that the lack of referrals coming through that kind of asking for referral methods that is fairly standard in other sales jobs?
Yeah.
Do you think that has to do with the fact that someone else doesn't want your voice competing with their product against their own? So, the individual is maybe feeling like they don't want to give you to someone else to
That could be. It's an interesting. I've always wondered. I always thought this seems odd, but it's like there's a real aversion to responding, or to, when I would ask, I would just get crickets. That might have something to do with it, or they just kind of want to keep you to themselves. That could very well be it. But by the same token, occasionally I will have a client or somebody will reach out to me and say, "Hey, I was referred to you by." As a matter of fact, that's how I came to work for Disney. I do the Disney Vacation Club materials. And I got a call out of the blue one day from Disney, and they said such and such studio in New York, studio I had never heard of, said you'd be great for this, and they referred us to you. So I mean, I guess you never know. You never know, but that's how it's worked for me.
So Mike is asking if they are accepting demos, what's the best method to send them, via email, or what methodology to use to get the demo in front of them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never actually attach and send an email or send a file on an email unless they ask for it, because usually that means their firewall will just block it and it'll create problems. The easiest way is if you have a website, direct them back to your website. If you don't, you can use, there's a website called soundcloud.com, soundcloud.com. It's free. And you can upload your audio there, get a link, and then send the link to the client.
You may also want to mention to people, Bill, that in this day and age, people are very reluctant to download a file. So we don't want to give them anything other than something where they can click and stream it, right?
Yeah, attaching a file is just never a good idea unless they ask for it. Sometimes I will have a client that says, "Hey, can you just attach an email or attach a file and send it to me?" If they ask for it, I'm glad to do that, but I never do it unless they tell me to.
Okay, so Addie is asking, do you recommend using a database to find your prospects when we start, LinkedIn or something else? So basically, Addie's question is about where do we find the work?
I mean, yeah, you could certainly go to LinkedIn. I will tell you the easiest way, and I am if you know me at all, you'll find out that I like to find the simplest, most essential, way. I weed out all the junk and just get right down to what's easiest and most productive. And for me, I simply Google for media production companies, video production companies. And let me tell you why, because there are tens of thousands of these companies all over the world, and they all produce media, most of which requires voice. And so it's as simple as using Google. It really is.
My guess is that, and I mean, I don't know if you can even identify this, but this big job that you're now doing, 50 hours for a documentary,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that that came through exactly one of those production companies.
It did come through a production company. Yes. And interestingly enough, it's one located in, I think, Spain. And so, the client is not even a native speaker of English, but somehow, they needed an English voice to do the overdubs, and so, it all worked out.
Quick question from Mike who asks, and I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you ever give money for referrals?
No, no, I never do that. In my experience, if people, if people like you and you have a relationship with them, and they feel comfortable, then they're going to refer you. But I've never actually used monetary incentive to do that. I'm
Brian's
not saying you
question,
shouldn't, but I'm just saying I haven't.
yeah, Brian's question is when you're selling, do you personalize it from client to client or send out some kind of a generic email or another generic means of contact?
I do them individually. I don't do blasts, if that's kind of what you're getting at. I do really when I'm doing the sales thing. There are two ways I do that primarily by telephone and by email. And if I'm doing email, a lot of times it's because time zone differences. And for instance, it's easy for me to send in the evening. I can send emails to clients in Europe, or Russia or wherever. And then they can see it when they get up a little bit in a few hours. But what I'll do is go to their website, see what they do, and then try to personalize it as best I can based on, me seeing what they do. And when I do a phone call, obviously I can personalize it that way as well.
Well, Jim is asking a question that, of course, answers are contained in volume in the blueprint that you offer. But his question is, I've had moderate success in approaching ad agencies, but would love to hear your thoughts on other places to prospect.
Well, ad agencies are great. I have found that it is, when you look at ad agencies, you're looking at a very small slice of the pie. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But you want to expand and be able to hit as many people as you can. And that's why, going back to what I said earlier with the media production houses, if you simply Google video production, you're going to find tens of thousands of companies all over the world. And here's another point that I think is worth noting, that there's big demand for North American voices, all over the world. Well, really, there's an allure of a voice that's different and sounds more international than your own. So, it might be a British voice in the U.S. or Australian voice, but my voice, I do probably 25% of all my work is in Europe. I do a ton of work in Europe, and so don't limit your market. Don't think local. Don't even think national. Think global. But if you Google video production house or video production company, again, you'll never run out of prospects. Never.
Okay, so Andy's got a question here that I'll ask, but then I'll add an addendum to. He says, are there any kind of trade organizations that production houses are involved with that you could network with in our respective areas? And to elaborate on that, I would say, Bill, how effective is the whole concept of networking in the voiceover business?
Yeah, it has not been my most effective means of marketing. Now, but I worked for an instructional design firm a number of years back, as I mentioned, and really the biggest trade organization is the American Society of Training and Development, and now they've actually have another name now. I don't even know what it is, but I've made contact with them, and I've looked into that, but I'm not convinced that would be as effective as what I'm doing now, which is just reaching out one at a time to production houses. And so, stay tuned. Maybe I'll find a better way. I'm always looking for better ways to do things, but so far, what I'm doing has been most effective.
Couple questions coming in here from a couple different people as it relates to how do you charge for your services? Both, I mean, you can talk about it starting out or now. How do you set your fees?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I've looked at my my voiceover business as if I was starting a career from scratch. And so I came in at entry level. I didn't expect big dollars. I didn't have a resume. I had some skills, and I think I did a pretty solid job, although not as good as I am today. But I was certainly presentable. We'll put it that way. But I came in doing some really low dollar jobs just because I had no work to do. And my philosophy has been when you don't have work, you take whatever work you can get. And once your day's filled up, well, then you can begin to weed out the low pay jobs and make room for higher pay jobs. That's the way I've always approached it. But the weird thing about voiceover, I don't know if it's not so much weird, it's really awesome, is that you have all kinds of different price points. It's not one size fits all because a local radio station is not going to pay the same for a commercial that a national brand is going to pay for a national television commercial. What I get paid by, let's say, I don't know, like a Walmart or by John Deere or Ryder Trucks for a corporate piece is going to be typically more than I'm going to get paid for by a small local company that's doing a 2 or 3 minute maybe explainer video. So there's no easy answer to that. It's a graduated scale, but I will say that I've been able to evolve and spiral up my income over the past 13 years.
And one of the things that we talk to our group, our VO Blueprint group about, is the fact that when you're first starting out, Bill, you may spend 90 to 95% of your time marketing
Yeah.
and 5 to 10% of your time recording voice work. And then as time goes on, those numbers will start to change. And if you ever get to the point where you have too much work, well, clearly all you need to do is increase your prices, right?
Absolutely. It's funny. I actually had a conversation with a guy I haven't talked to probably in 5 years. He's an audiobook publisher, and he was trying to hire me back again today. He's got more books than I could ever record. As many books as I want to record, he has for me. And there was a time when that was perfect for me because my plate wasn't full yet. I was still growing my business. But I told him, today that my plate is filled with jobs that pay a lot more, and and he's a business guy, so he understood and he got it. But you don't start off there. You have to basically, you start working at McDonald's and you work your way up from there.
Right. And when you first started out doing audiobooks, I remember somebody in our group the other day posted the fact that after everything was said and done, they made the equivalent of about $9.50 an hour doing an audiobook. And you may want to talk about, the differences. There are different rates for different kinds of work. And again, now at the very, very highest level, there are probably a handful of people who get paid a lot of money to do
Sure.
audiobooks, but it's the minority, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can think of it in 2 or 3 tiers, and the top tier is going to be the New York Times bestsellers. And you don't get hired to record a book like that unless you've got a lot of experience and you are represented by a major talent agency, because there's only a few jobs of those available at any given time. The
Speaking,
vast,
yeah, go ahead. I'm
still
sorry.
good. No, it's okay. I was just going to say the vast majority of books out there are going to, pay what they call royalty share, where they pay you, a small, maybe a couple pennies per book, and then they sell 500 books, something like that, or they pay you $50 an hour, or $100 or $150 per finished hour of audio. That would be the vast majority of the work out there.
And a number of questions from people in our audience are asking, well, okay, this is great. How much money, and I know you're always hesitant to talk about this, but I always think it's important for people to know. Explain to people, we also have a business training new voice talent to get into and succeed as
Yeah.
voiceover. But people are always curious, like, how much money do you actually make doing your voice work these days?
Yeah, no, and let me first of all say this: you should always ask a coach that. If you're wanting them to help you make money, you should always ask that question. How much? Not train. No, don't tell me what you make training. Tell me what you make actually recording voiceovers, because I want to know you can do it. If I'm going to pay you to help me, this year I'm on track to make close to $400,000 in voiceover work.
And I drag him kicking and screaming to do the training work, which he loves to do, but just sometimes doesn't have enough time to do, right, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's but what's great is we do have this group and we have a system of support and recorded training as well as the live training. And so, yeah, fortunately I'm able to juggle all those plates.
Now, this question sort of dovetails with questions that relate to agents and should you have one and is that the way to go? People are wondering about Fiverr, which you and we recommend to people starting out. But of course,
Yeah.
Fiverr has been much maligned by traditional voiceover people to the point where they want to make it now. They want to make it so that, and I really feel the analogy here, having lived 20 years in New York City, is very apt, which is all of the New York City cab drivers hate Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
And you may want to use that as an example of why the taxi drivers with the medallions are objecting to the Uber and Lyft and put that into the voiceover field.
It's a very good comparison. I was talking to actually a friend was telling me yesterday, like a medallion used to go in New York for like $600,000, and
And
now it's
more.
going for like $25,000. Yeah. And the reason is because technology is now giving the power to the people. I mean, if you want to drive for Uber, it's a very easy process. You could start driving for Uber or Lyft tomorrow. And the ability for me to use your service, it's easier, it's cheaper for the end client. And so that's what's happened in voiceover. Now with technology, we can work directly for the clients. And sure, we can do it for them cheaper than they used to be able to. But like it's not, I mean, but you can still, as I've demonstrated, you can make plenty of money doing it. But those who have a vested interest in keeping things the way they have been for the past 30, 40, 50 years are going to kick, scream, and drag their heels. And it's human nature. We all tend to want to protect what we have. So, you're going to hear people scream against Fiverr. But I've got students, as Fred will attest to, making six figures just off Fiverr, just off Fiverr. It can be
Yeah.
a very lucrative platform.
And you may want to address as well, because this was part of the question, which is, well, if you do work on Fiverr, you're going to get blackballed in the rest of the industry.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Now, and if somebody is sitting around, if an agent or a casting director is actually that's what they're doing, they're looking online to try to identify people. Then number one, they need to get a real job because they have way too much time on their hands, and it's pathetic. My philosophy is who cares? I could care. My name, I'm on Fiverr, you know, and I'm making some pretty decent money on there. It's just one of my revenue streams. And if someone wants to blackball me, I could care less because I've got the power. They don't have the power. I've got the power. There's nothing stopping me going direct to clients. I can do whatever I want with my business, and so can you. So never let somebody intimidate you like that.
Yeah, and if you're a salesperson, man, you know that you're going to go where they'll reward you the most,
Absolutely.
irregardless of your education, background, title, et cetera. And it's a similar kind of very kind of entrepreneurial spirit within the voiceover community that is pursuing Bill's methods and the method that you teach. Now, Ron is asking, what percentage of your revenue that you generate from voiceover comes in from pay to play versus self-generated customers? Now, by that, I guess he means direct people who find you.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I would argue it's all self-generated because there's actually a whole system to using pay to play. It's not passive. You have to understand how that system works. But I would say at least, oh my gosh, at least half of my client base, more than half of my client base, have come through websites like Voice123 or Voices.com. And understand, I've been on those websites for like 13 years, so I've cultivated a lot of clients through there.
Andy's got a question here where he says, do you need, and this is one we hear a lot from people getting started, do you need permission from a client to use the work you do for them on a demo?
Um, Here's my philosophy. Unless I've been told not to, I don't worry about it. In other words, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yes, and also, when you're recording a demo, you can talk about the concept of fair use for people as well here.
Yeah. Now, if it's something again that's under non-disclosure, then obviously you can't use that. You've agreed. It's secret information. You got to keep it on the down low. But otherwise, it's this whole idea of or fair use is that if you're not using it for profit, you're not selling it. It's not a product you're selling. Then you're allowed to use it for demonstration purposes.
Got it. Okay, so now here's a good question from Ernest, which says, is there work for VO in other English-speaking countries that may not be mainstream, like Europe, USA, Australia, Canada, etc. So in other words, give me and give our audience members some ideas of how does the industry work now? Is it local? Is it global? Is it national? Just explain that.
You know what? Let me show you something to demonstrate that. I think, and Fred, I think you'll get a kick out of this as well. I was just sharing this with somebody yesterday. Let me bring it up on YouTube. This is a project that I did, and let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see this.
I
Okay,
can,
is it popping
yeah,
up?
yeah.
Okay, okay, this is my YouTube channel. Um, it's under my, let's see here, voiceovers. If I can't, oh, that's not it. If I can't find it quickly, I'll move on. I won't waste time. But, never mind. Let me turn that off. I'm not finding it. What it was, it's a commercial, it's a German commercial for Chevrolet, where it's all done in German, except for the last four words where I jump in and I say Chevrolet, find new roads. And a few years ago, I was hired by Chevrolet to be the voice of Find New Roads for every country in the world, with the exception of the US. John Cusack did that for the US, and I did it for everybody else. But the point is, it's an American brand. And even though it was done in Italian and Spanish and Chinese and Korean and, you name the language, it was done in it. That English voice at the end, was to stamp the American, give it, make it an American brand. But that translated into virtually every culture in the world. So going back to the question, there is demand for North American speaking, English speaking folk all over the world, in large part because of business. English is the international business language, and so using our voice on things in other countries has become very commonplace. I do tons of e-learning for corporate audiences all over the world.
I had a call with somebody the other day. Oftentimes, people will set up calls with me, and we'll talk about that here in a bit, to see if they're a good match for the program that we offer. And the gentleman said to me, I've got a pretty strong accent. Is that going to hurt me from doing work as a voiceover artist? And your answer would be?
Well, and the accent was like an American
He had an
accent,
Irish
like.
accent. He's from Ireland, so he had an Irish
Oh,
accent.
Irish. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I always tell people, and even if it's, even if you're Boston or, New York or whatever, regardless of whatever your dialect or accent is, you embrace it. It's part of your personality. That's authenticity. People love authenticity, and what you'll find is that not only different languages, but different dialects and accents are used more than they ever have been. So you have to embrace it and go with it.
And here's a common question that we get. Matt's asking, where's the best place to find good copy for your demos? So how do you figure out how to put your demos together? And you always recommend?
You just go to YouTube or iSpot.tv. iSpot.tv. There are just about every TV commercial that's ever been recorded and aired, you will find on one of those two platforms. Find some commercials you like and literally transcribe them. Work with real copy written by professional copywriters for real brands. Don't use any of this bogus made up stuff, because usually it's pretty bad.
And again, going back to the previous question and the previous answer, there's nothing wrong with using, as you do, explain the
Right.
Walmart commercial.
Yeah, on my demo, if you look at my video demo, as a matter of fact, let me bring it up here. If I can find it quickly. Oh yeah, I know. I'll bring it up on my website and I'll show you. And what I'm going to tell you about it up front here is that this particular piece, this commercial you're about to see, and here,
I don't
let's
see
see.
it. Just
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, you should now.
Yep.
Okay, this was actually an audition that I did for an agent that I did not get hired for. So with that in mind, let me just play the little clip for you. Here we go.
No audio here, Bill.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
Raises us all.
Start
Is
again.
investing in the most important part of our company, our people. Because a raise in pay raises us all.
Okay, so now explain.
And there we go. And so that, again, that's an audition. That was not a real commercial, but it was it was a real commercial, but it wasn't one that I won.
But yet, that one audition that you've now put into your video demo has gotten you probably more work than anything you've ever
Oh my
done.
gosh, it's my greatest hit. Yeah, almost everybody says, do the Walmart thing, do the Walmart thing.
Why do you think they say that?
Because it resonates with them. It's like, you know how an artist or singer can have like a career song, they have a big hit, and for some reason it just resonates with people. It's the same thing with your demo. You have to really pay attention, because what you'll find over time is that clients will gravitate to one or two different things that you do and will ask for that more than anything else. They'll say, hey, I really love the way you did such and such. You have to listen for that. And when they say that, know that that's you probably at your best. That's you at your most authentic. It resonates with people. It connects with people. Use it.
So Brian's asking, what does the final product look like from our end? After I'm hired, what is expected of me? Background music, video, sound effects, what is?
I never do any of that stuff. And like I said, I've recorded over 10,000 projects. All I record is voice. What I deliver is a edited, it's edited, and meaning I take the mistakes out of it, and it's ready to use. So when I'm done with a project, they get it. They can just plug it right into their video or whatever it is they do with it. I just give them the voice, though.
So for the uninformed and those who are new to the business, Brian's question is basically saying, you're providing the raw voice, they provide as audio engineers, or their company provides the music, the video, the sound effects.
Sound
That's
effects, yeah.
yours is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
That's exactly right, yes.
Got it. Okay, let's see here. Brian says, how did you get the video without the background and put your own voice? Brian, that's the secret sauce that we sell you.
We don't have time to go into that, but it's not complicated.
Yeah, it's really not, Brian. So it is possible. It's kind of like karaoke, where you've got the ability to find the video file without the audio, then you place your voiceover over the top of it. So it's really not a whole lot of smoke and mirrors there. Let's see. So John says, to that point, would you place that hit? Oh, this is a good question, John. So at what point would you place that hit spot, at the beginning or the end of the demo reel? Well, naturally, you saw Bill put it up front. So Walmart up front because it's your hit, right?
Yes, and because most people will not listen to your demo for more than a few seconds. They make immediate decisions. Just like when you listen to the radio, you're scanning the dial. It takes you 3 seconds to decide whether you want to listen or not. Same thing with a demo.
Yeah. So Steve probably has an audio background. He says, when you record for clients, at what rates do you record? What bit rate and all of those? And if your eyes are glazing over when you hear this answer to the question, don't worry, folks, because it's a little bit more technical. So
yeah, the vast majority of my projects are WAV. That's the file format, WAV. It's recorded at 44,100 kilohertz, 16-bit. Sometimes higher if they request it, but that's standard.
There you go. Okay, so okay. So Matt says, and I'm not sure I quite understand. Wait a second. How do you feel just with? I'm not sure. I'll try this, Matt. How do you feel about fleshed out demos that create within back? You know what, Matt? Reformulate that one so I can get it right. I'm not really sure. So Bill, we've got, and I'll get back to Matt's question shortly, but why don't you tell people kind of what we have and how we try and help people who are in sales get into the voiceover business?
Yeah, people started coming to me, it's been over 10 years now, asking for help in building their careers. And so I've been doing that, and I've done this for hundreds of people. But what I wanted to, there's a big demand, a number of people have come to me, and it's not feasible for me to do one-on-one coaching with all these folks because I have a full-time career of my own, obviously. So what I would have created is a program in which it captures all the training, all the many hours of things that you need to do and understand, with a live component and a community component. We call it the Voiceover Blueprint. And so what it contains is this. There's over 70 hours of training in the Blueprint. Now, this is on-demand streaming video that I've created that covers every aspect of, everything from setting up your studio to how do you work with audio and record and edit audio, all of the different channels of marketing and performance and dealing with clients and how to run your back office. And I could go on and on. It's a lot. Like I said, 70 plus hours. So somebody once told me it's kind of like a university education for voiceover. Think of it that way, covering everything. But it's not just a matter of having information dumped on you. That's kind of the core of this. It's the information you need to understand. But there's also, there's a live interactive component. And so I provide over 15 hours of live group coaching per month. As a matter of fact, we had a session earlier today where those in the program would get together using this platform, GoToWebinar, where you're able to ask questions, where you're able to read, and I can give you feedback and coaching and direction, where we can talk specific marketing strategies or whatever needs to be coached. There's lots of opportunity for personal interaction. Like I said, 15 hours of live group coaching per month. But there's also a community component, and I have a private Facebook group which you're in. And within the community, these are all people like you. Some are brand new, some have done it for a while and are very successful, but they're all very committed to not only building their own business, but helping support other people. So you've got a source of support and help and camaraderie. And of course, I participate, Fred participates. My son, Alex, who is an audio engineer, provides audio support within the group. He participates. My daughter, who's my full-time assistant, but also she's a very successful part-time voiceover talent. She also coaches and provides support. I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Fred?
No, I was just thinking.
I thought I heard your voice. I'm sorry.
It's a three-part component: the online training, the group coaching that we do via webinars every week, and then the private Facebook group, which has those two. But the thing I find most impressive, and whenever I talk to people, they get most excited about the second part. Yeah, why don't you explain that?
Yeah, and that is when I work, and I do, it can be anywhere from 5 to 8 jobs a day. I carry a heavy workload recording, but as I work, I live stream into that group so that you can watch. If you're in the group right now, you could actually go in and bring up, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 videos that I did today. I mean, live streams from today. And there are thousands, we're guessing hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours of streaming audio that's archived in the group. Because I started doing this, gosh, how long ago? Was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? It's been a few years.
Close to 3 now. Yeah, and so everything, you can either watch it live or watch the recording, and it's all saved. Facebook allows or automatically saves it, and then you can actually, and you tag them so you can search by just demos or editing or whatever.
Yeah, and so you see me do auditions, you see me do the audio editing. You can, like I did a session today that was directed by the client over Source Connect. You can watch it and listen in on that. You get to hear everything that goes on. So it's a real, not only learning by me telling you and us interacting, but you getting to virtually sit beside me in the studio and watch as I work every day.
And to me, one of the most, if I were just starting a voiceover career, I really like the idea of watching you as you edit. So if I was starting, I would get Adobe Audition like you have. I'd watch your editing sessions, and I would learn how to get better and faster at the editing, which is also something that people see on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every day. And, obviously it'd be awesome if you could all sit in here with me and come to my home in Illinois. That's not really practical for any of us, but this way you can be a part of what I do on a day-to-day basis and learn up close and personal.
And Bill, if you were guessing, why is it that you're the only person in the industry, I repeat, the only person in the industry that streams their workday in the voiceover business live for all to see to our select group?
Well, it's because I have work to record. And I think it's as simple as that. It's because I actually work. I've got work to do. Outside of, training is not my primary job. My primary job is I'm a voiceover talent. But I'm like a university hospital. I'm doing real work on real patients, but I invite you to come along so I can teach you as I do it.
Perfect analogy. So why don't we tell people now, if you're serious about this and want to get going, what's their next step?
Then all you have to do is go to this URL, theblueprintcall.com, and what will pop up is a place for you to be able to schedule a 15-minute discovery call. And that's just a call to talk, to find out more about you, your goals, and make sure this is a good fit for you, answer your questions, and see if this might be the answer, for you as you consider voiceover as whether it's a full-time career or a part-time job or whatever the case may be.
If I just put that in the chat, so if somebody can click on that and make sure it actually goes to someplace where you can book, you don't have to do it, but just let me know that it actually, I can probably do it myself here too. Right? It appears to be working. Good.
Yeah, it's working for me too.
Excellent. Okay, so there you have it, folks. A lot of great questions tonight, and just to sum it up, so just give us the ultimate, put a bow on this with why salespeople would make great voiceover artists.
Well, you've already got amazing experience. I mean, you understand how to problem solve, you understand how to communicate, you understand the role of emotion and motivating people, which is key in your performance of voiceover talent. And you understand this is a numbers game, perhaps more than anybody else. And I think that above anything else allowed me to succeed as a voiceover talent. and it can do the same for you. So at the very least, I hope you sign up for your discovery call, and let's find out if this is right for you.
Excellent. Hey, thanks everyone for being here, and again, thanks Bill for even with a voice and
Oh,
very,
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone.
have a good night, folks.
Night.